Hafa and hello, my name is Kelly Bloss and this is my channel Dynabites International. And this is part 5 in my 5-part series of mango recipes, my favorite mango recipes. And today I'm making mango turnovers. It really is, I think it's pretty simple, but some might say it was probably a medium level skilled dessert. But hey, we could all learn at some point, right? The crust is super simple. We've made it before. It's my pie crust with a little bit more sugar and a new ingredient, ground cinnamon. For me, it's easiest to make it in a food processor. So if you have a food processor, then you've already gotten to that mid-level. It takes away all the work. When you're making a pie crust, the most important thing to do is keep the butter as cold as possible because and work it the least amount as possible, because the more you work the dough, the tougher it gets, and then you warm the butter, and it actually becomes more of a cracker and rubbery texture than it would a flaky and buttery texture. So the crust, again, if you have a food processor, that's great. If not, it's a little bit more work. And to be honest with you, there are lots of people on YouTube who make pie crusts by hand. Check them out. The pie crust recipe that we're using will actually make 4 turnovers. So before we put the pie crust into the refrigerator for an hour to bring it back up to the temperature that I want, I actually cut it into 4 sections as equally as possible. And you could be really technical and weigh it if you wanted to. I haven't done that yet. I kind of just eyeball it. And maybe one comes out a little bit bigger than the other, but you kind of just play with it. And what we also want to do before we wrap it in plastic is we want to form them into kind of hockey puck sized discs, and then wrap it in plastic wrap and put that in the refrigerator. This is gonna help us, this is gonna make it easier for us to roll out the dough that we're gonna be using to make the turnover. The filling for the mango turnover is really pretty much the same filling that goes into the mango pie, but this time we're adding lemon zest and lemon juice. Put it in a saucepan, add all of your ingredients, mix it really well. And then turn on your heat and let it just come to a boil. And just when it comes to a boil, then lower it down to a simmer. Well, the reason why we're trying to keep it on there as long as possible is because the minute tapioca needs to soften. And that's why we added also, it's 1 to 2 tablespoons of water. That 1 to 2 tablespoons of water will help the tapioca to cook and become softer, but also soak up the juices so that you're not having a watery consistency of the filling inside the turnover, and it won't make your crust soggy. After you're done cooking your filling, you'll see it really thicken up, and that's what we're looking for. We want it to be thick because, again, we don't want it to spill out once it's baked. We don't want it to make the crust soggy. So this is really what we're looking for. Now, we need the filling to come to room temperature so that when we're ready to form the turnovers, we're not softening the crust or the butter in the crust, and then we're not, again, making it soggy or anything like that. After the crust has been in the refrigerator for an hour, take it out and put it on your countertop for about 5 to 8 minutes. It needs to soften a little bit before it's pliable enough to roll out. You want the pie crust to be formed into a 6-inch diameter circle as close as possible. If you want it perfect, you can get a bowl from your kitchen, and if it's about 6 inches in diameter, use that to cut the edges of the pie crust. Now you want to be careful not to make this pie crust too thin, because what'll happen is it'll split when it's baking. And it's okay if there's some splitting, that's totally fine, because actually that's what happens to mine all the time. The problem is that, and that usually just happens at the top, but if it's too thin, it can happen on the sides, on the bottom, and then you'll just have a big mess, once you've baked. When you roll it out, then you'll add about a 3/4 full to 1 scoop. I use the ice cream scooper, so that's almost a 1/4 cup of filling for each turnover. But I rolled my dough out on a parchment paper, as you can see. And that's because this parchment paper helped me to fold the turnover to be able to form it and close it. And then what I do with the parchment paper is I kind of fold it into an envelope and tuck it, because I actually put my pie crust or my turnovers into the freezer for 30 minutes. Like I do my pie crust for my mango pie. I put it in there for 30 minutes before I actually bake it. And I just use a simple pinching method at the end, at the edges. I find that when I try to put a design on it, it actually thins the edges too much, and it can cause burning. And you can actually see it on one of my turnovers. It can cause burning because the edges are too thin, but it can also cause a lot of breakage. So that's when you'll see some of the filling ooze out because of these little breaks in the dough. So that's kind of my take on it. And then we'll put it in the freezer. So once we have all of them, pinched up into little pockets, we want to, again, wrap them in the parchment paper that we have, put them in the freezer for 30 minutes, and then take it out of the freezer, heat our oven at 415 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we'll put it in there for 25 to 35 minutes. Now, at about the 15 or 20 minute mark, you'll want to check your turnovers. If you start to see it get really dark, go ahead and grab some aluminum foil and create like a little tent on top to keep it from burning, the edges from burning too much. I mean, that's always going to be your risk there, is that the edges of the turnover are going to be too thin that they burn. They're not particularly palatable, so just be careful with that. The mango turnovers have rested overnight, so now we're going to try it. As you can see, they're quite big, but it's kind of hard to make a smaller one. Anyway, this spice crust is amazing, and I really hope you enjoy it. Now that minute tapioca really holds the flavors of the mango and the lemon in. I mean, it really soaks it up, so you're gonna be getting that flavor throughout the turnover. All right, let's try it. Cheers. Makes you want to wiggle. That pie crust, like I said, it's buttery, perfect amount of sweetness. It's flaky. Oh, it's so good. With that mango, like I said, with the tapioca, soaking up all those juices, you're getting it throughout the whole turnover. I could literally eat the whole thing in this one sitting. And I'm sure you could too. They're that good. You won't want to share them. So, I really hope you enjoyed this recipe and that you'll try it at home. If you did enjoy this recipe, you can find the link to the recipe in the description below. And I hope you'll like, share, and subscribe. Thanks so much for joining me today. Have a good one.